We just saw the conclusion of the NHL's new in-season tournament, the Four Nations Faceoff, in which Canada defeated the United States in the championship game. The round-robin tourney consists of 4 teams representing 4 of the 5 nations that have produced the most active NHL talent this season: Canada, the United States, Sweden, and Finland, excluding Russia, which outnumbers the number of Finnish pros in the league. The week-long event was first announced at the 2024 NHL All-Star Game, where we learned that the tournament would temporarily replace the All-Star Game in 2025. The NHL's All-Star Weekend had long been in decline due to lost ideas and fan disengagement. Initially, the game was the Stanley Cup winner against the best players of the other teams in the NHL. When the league expanded to 12 teams, it was the best of the West against the best of the East. Over time, that format has continued to change. With the game meaning less, the motivation for players to play in it became less. The risk of injury led to many players opting not to participate. The changes made to the format were supposed to change that and keep the All-Star Game exciting for the fans, which it did not succeed in doing so. Sounds familiar? The Four Nations Faceoff was formed to set up the NHL's participation in next year's Olympics, as the league didn't allow players to participate in the previous 2 Winter Olympic Games. But after this successful experiment, it may be something that the NHL looks at going forward. A key factor in this tournament's victory was the timing of it all. As we just identified, All-Star Weekend needed some reinvigoration, but half of the participating nations were in a particularly tense time. Hockey was perhaps the perfect sport to have the US and Canada scrap it out, and it led to some entertaining and politically charged hockey that left the general public engaged with hockey and the NHL more than ever before during All-Star Weekend. Of course, as a basketball and NBA fan, I'm hinting at how this key timing is profoundly present for the association right now. If you still had the patience, like I unfortunately did, you would have just recently watched the disaster that was the NBA All-Star Weekend in San Francisco this past week. Much like the NHL and the NFL, the NBA has gravely struggled to keep fans engaged with All-Star in recent years, and Adam Silver has taken the initiative to start throwing ideas at the wall in the last 5 years or so. It started with the absolvement of East versus West and the schoolyard draft format. The Elam format proved fantastic for exactly 1, maybe 2 years, but retrospectively, it was likely more credited to the passing of Kobe Bryant, creating a lightning-in-a-bottle period of basketball engagement from both fans and players alike in the weeks leading up to the pandemic. Then, East versus West was restored and immediately resulted in the least engaging, highest-scoring All-Star game in NBA history. The response to that 2024 game was to completely restructure the All-Star Game into a tournament, bringing in the best Rising Stars team to play against Hall of Fame contenders in a whopping 42 minutes of basketball being played over a 3-hour broadcast. It was truly pathetic, and the league is already scrambling to try something else for the 2026 game in Inglewood. On the other side of the fan engagement scale, we have the events of the 2024 Paris Olympics, one of the most exciting and stacked men's basketball tournaments in the history of the Olympiad. Coincidentally, the Netflix documentary journaling the medalists and Canada's journey to the final game was released amid Four Nations competition, giving everyone a behind-the-scenes look and a refresher as to why the events of that summer were so important and impactful to the fans. Seeing the US take the competition seriously by sending their best to Paris like the rest of the world created a blockbuster film of basketball where the best players on the planet represented their nations and threw haymakers at one another. If anything, that feeling needs to be channeled once a year to keep the fan base engaged, and not just every few years when it's time for the World Cup or the Olympic Games. That is where this Four Nations concept comes in. What if the NBA adopts the same format and uses it to reinvigorate All-Star Weekend? What would it look like in a basketball sense? The first thing to address is the Four Nations participating. A key thing of note is that unlike the Olympics and like the NHL's tournament, only players under active contracts with the NBA would be eligible to participate. Unfortunately, this would eliminate a country many people would want to see be a part of the games, like Serbia. Despite having the best player in the world hail from the nation, the NBA only has 5 players other than Jokic, not enough to represent a 12-man roster. Even the winners of the 2023 World Cup, Germany, only have 8 players in the league. This leaves us with precisely 4 countries with enough players to form a tournament. Of course, the United States will be one of them. It's their native league, and despite the trends in the past couple of decades, the NBA is still a majority American league. The country with the second most active NBA players is Canada. Headlined by MVP caliber Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Team Canada had underperformed in Paris, but their ability to fill a roster with nothing but NBA players is a testament to how far the country has come in terms of developing talent since their run in the 2000 Sydney Games. Third and fourth teams is where it takes a little different route from the NHL's iteration, as the next team would be France. The Blues were already a competitive national program before adding Victor Wembanyama, and now the supercharged team that has won the last 2 Olympic silver medals will be looking to continue to make America sweat for their golds. The fourth nation here may be a bit unrecognized now, as they played no major role in the recent Olympics, but they have been one of the most proud and growing programs over the last 20 years, Australia. The Boomers are in an interesting spot. They won their very first Olympic medal in Tokyo 2 games ago, and like France, they are seeing a changing of the guards as cornerstones like Patty Mills are aging out of the spotlight. With that being said, there are 14 Australians in the NBA, including a 9-time NBA All-Star who has recently self-reignited his career-long rumors of flirting with the possibility of suiting up for the Boomers. As for how these rosters will look, well, you would assume that since most NBA players are American, that lineup would be pretty lopsided compared to the opposing countries. However, as we've seen in the World Cup for the past decade or so, when Team USA doesn't care, they aren't sending out the best batch of guys. With this taking place in the middle of the season, it is a given that the elder statesmen of the league, especially those who have already led the US to gold, will prioritize preserving their bodies to take on the second half of the season instead of committing to the tournament, ruling out the league's biggest names like LeBron, Durant, Curry, and AD, potentially knocking out recent winners and veterans like Bam Adebayo and Devin Booker as well. That takes a lot of firepower from the pool of players, but still leaves an opportunity for some young stars to take the mantle and essentially get an audition to become a core piece of the 2028 roster of Team USA. Even within that group of young players, there will be some who will choose to forego the tournament due to injury history and management. It'll be unlikely to see guys like Zion Williamson, LaMelo Ball, and perhaps Chet, Cade, Ja, and Paolo. The players that remain form a roster more resembling that of the underwhelming and underperforming groups that have been sent to FIBA in recent years. However, with a new scenario and a median of lesser talent overall, it can produce a different outcome. The lead guys would likely be the younger Olympians who the league has stamped as the marketed future of the NBA. Guys like Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, and likely Jalen Brunson would lead the charge for the backcourt depth. In my opinion, it would be of highest priority to get Jason Tatum on board. Despite his detractors, he has ultimately become the best American player in the league and is poised to be the lead role for Team USA at the LA Olympics in 3 years. Young perennial all-stars and premier role players will likely fill out the remainder of the team. Rising names like Evan Mobley and Jalen Williams, program familiars like Jaren Jackson Jr., Josh Hart, Austin Reeves, and Cam Johnson, and perhaps a couple of third-year players with massive upsides like Amen Thompson and Brandon Miller. As for Canada and the remainder of the countries that would be involved, the rosters are pretty cut and dry, as there are significantly fewer players to choose from compared to the States. The main characters, as expected, are the frontmen of Canada basketball this decade, the guys that you can name off the top of your head when thinking about Canadians in the league: Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, RJ Barrett, Jamal Murray, and Andrew Wiggins. Key options that have been invaluable to both the national team and their respective NBA teams like Lou Dort and Dylan Brooks. Rising Canadian stars like Shaedon Sharpe, Zach Edey, and Andrew Nembhard would make a solid squad, filling it out with program faithful and players needed for size like Brandon Clark and Dwight Powell, as well as Trey Lyles or Chris Boucher. For the French, we can only hope that the alien Victor Wembanyama will be healthy enough to contribute towards the tournament. We've seen how much international play and representing France means to him, and it would certainly serve for some intense and otherworldly play from the young superstar. Surrounding him would be a lot of size, as a majority of the French players in the league today are wings and bigs. After Wemby, the next in line are Rudy Gobert and the top 2 picks in last year's draft, Zachary Richardson and Alex Sarr. In fact, a good chunk of players for France are rookies. Tejan Salon was also a 2024 lottery pick, and Pacome Dadier was a late first-round selection for the Knicks. Ousmane Dieng, Sidi Sissoko, and Ryan Rupert are all also under the age of 22. Bilal Coulibaly will also be a key contributor for this roster, due in fact to his standout skill set and the level of NBA run that he has received in his first 2 seasons. This is because the lineup has 2 glaring issues. They are too young and too tall. Some vets like Blues legend Nick Batum and the Olympic stud Gershon Yabusele will be huge in addressing this problem, but unless they call upon someone like Killian Hayes, they are without a true point guard, leaving the role to a rookie like Dadier. Then there's Australia. A plethora of very serviceable NBA role players are Aussies. Josh Giddey, Dante Exum, Josh Green, and Matisse Thybulle have all had productive stretches in their careers. Dyson Daniels is having a historic year and will be a primary player here. If Ben Simmons is filling up to it, he could also be a lead guy for their rotation regardless of position. Their bigs leave much to be desired with Jock Landale and Duop Reith, so Simmons might be formatted to play much in the front court. Vet icons for the program like Patty Mills and Joe Ingles are still hanging around the league and can also be vocal leaders for this group. The most interesting aspect of this team revolves around Kyrie Irving. Irving is very much American. He's a proud New Jersey native, like myself, and has suited up for the United States in both World Cup and Olympic play, winning gold medals in 2014 and 2016 respectively. With that being said, he recently made it clear that he has an intent and desire to play for the Boomers in the 2028 Olympics. While he would be 36 by then, it would be over a decade since he last represented the U.S. internationally, and Team USA would have to renounce his rights to the program. He may not have to jump through as many hoops to become a naturalized player for the program since he was born in Melbourne. This would bring a huge draw towards Australia's involvement in the tournament if they can get Kyrie to headline their team. It would also be the first look of a world-famous all-star suiting up for the Boomers after years of questions and speculation. It would be a valuable test to see how Irving would fare with the program and to get reps in with the team before 2028. At the end of the day, I love basketball and I love the NBA. I think people who are hardcore fans of the league want to see it succeed. I'm not a hockey fan or anyone who follows the NHL in the slightest, even though they are the last league left that properly represents my home state, and yet even I was exposed to the events of the Four Nations Faceoff because it was an overwhelming success for the league. People were engaged and people were talking about it. Yes, the timing of it all helped, but sometimes you need moments of alignment like that to get the ball rolling in the right direction. Adam Silver has been willing to try and implement new things constantly, to the intrigue of some and to the dismay of many. If we are going to continue to try to adjust the All-Star game for the years to come, especially as we know there will be a new change for next year after reception of this last one, then there is no reason not to try something completely new like this for the NBA. That is just my opinion based on the events that have transpired throughout this past month. But I would like to now flip it to the wonderful people who have stuck around watching this video. What would you like to see the NBA implement in an effort to save All-Star Weekend? Would you get behind a basketball adaptation of the Four Nations Face-Off? If so, which country do you think would win? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, I appreciate you guys for watching. If you enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.